Hey folks, welcome back to SC Haulers. I'm Sacks of Wine, and today, this has been a project in the making. I've spent the last week neck deep in RICs, cargo grids, and refinery queues trying to figure out what exactly happened to salvaging in 432 because a lot's changed. So this isn't a hype video. This is me piecing together what's actually going on with salvaging right now. I thought it would be an appropriate time to drop this video because 432 just went into a release candidate phase today, and it is Monday, October 13th. And so with RC around the corner, there's probably not going to be very many different changes, but they have changed quite a bit since my first Reclaimer video about a week ago. So let's go ahead and get into this haul. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the Reclaimer, go figure. And the Reclaimer has a cool new feature that we've all been asking for a long time. It has actually a couple of new features. Well, I guess they're not new, just stuff that should have been there before and wasn't. So the first thing is going to be docking. So now on the Reclaimer in 432, you can dock at stations and you can store the ship at stations, and it works almost flawlessly. I've only had one catastrophic event where I undocked and then my Reclaimer's thrusters would not turn on and I just went into a free spin and it was a bad time. But nothing uncommon with any other ship that's been able to dock so far. Another change that was made was the hatch that is in the back where you are supposed to throw down all of your cargo. This has been extended, and so it goes further down, and just in my testing with this, I've had no issues where the cargo just won't go down the hole. And so this is a positive change. I wish they really would have just made it where the door slides out of the way rather than just extending the elevator, but I guess it was easier to extend the elevator than it was to move the door out of the way, but that's neither here nor there. So the last thing about the Reclaimer changes specifically is with this extension of the cargo elevator in the back, they said that they added a cargo grid and they added an up-down button whenever there is cargo on the grid. Like, you should be able to access it from salvage processing or the salvage hold. I have not been able to activate the cargo grid, and I have not been able to use the button that was on there. I've only ever seen the up-down button while that elevator is up. So as of right now, that is not working, but it was in the patch notes for one of the PTU patches last week. But as of today, that is not there. We might see it in the RC patch later this evening, but for now, it is not there. So the next category I want to talk about is the actual mechanics of salvaging. And so RMC, or recycled material composite, this is where you would power wash the ship that you were salvaging, and you would get the RMC and create the boxes and stuff. This process has not changed. The mechanics of this have not changed. So you still scrape the same exact way, you still get RMC the same exact way. This has not changed at all. What has changed with RMC is the economy. And so now you can see prices for RMC. They are around 4 to 6K depending on the location that you're at. And I haven't explored all locations, but I can say at Orison, RMC now sells for 5.4K per SCU. Now, if RMC hasn't changed, that must mean that construction material has changed. And when I say construction material, I mean the process of fracturing a ship and disintegrating it after the fact. And that will give you construction material. Now, previously, this would just give you straight up construction material. Before we get into the rest of this process has not changed. The mechanics of how you get construction material has not changed. So you go up to a ship, you fracture it. Once it's fractured, you disintegrate it and it gives you material. That has not changed. So it's the process after the fact that has. So if you are in a Fortune or Vulture, you will get what's called Construction Material Rubble. If you are in a Reclaimer, you will get an item called Construction Material Salvage. Now, if you're one of these people that is like me that reads patch notes, you will see this in the patch notes. This was in the Evo patch notes. But you have powder, which is your highest density and lowest yield after refining, but has your fastest refinery time. You have scraps. These are not in the game yet. And you have chunks, which is your lowest density, but highest yield after refining and the longest refinery processing time. So how do these correlate with the two types of salvage or construction material that we have in game now? Well, according to the data, and thank you to my friend Shattered Orbit who pulled this out for me, but according to this data, construction material chunks are directly related to construction material salvage. And then construction material rubble is directly correlated with construction materials powder. So that would indicate that the Fortune and the Vulture are getting rubble or powder, and the Reclaimer is getting chunks, which would be salvage. And then whatever mid-tier ship comes in will get scraps. So I'm not expecting you to remember any of that, but if you do remember anything, remember this, that the Fortune and Vulture have a higher yield percentage than the Reclaimer, and there is a purpose for that, and I will explain that in a second. And that's going to take us into the refinery process. So after you have your construction material, and let's just say on your Fortune or Vulture, you got 28 SCU of construction material rubble. When you go to the refinery, if you pick a highest yield process, you would only get 30% of whatever construction material amount you brought in there. So if it were 28 SCU of construction material, all you would get in return is 8.4 SCU. And then that would round up in the refinery to 9 SCU. But just think about that. 30% of what you harvested in the Vulture and Fortune is now down to 8.4. But we're going to move over to the Reclaimer, and it's the same thing. So now you have the lowest density, but the highest yield. And how does that correlate in the refinery? So if you take 1400, we'll say in the video footage, I have 1,472. You are only going to get a 15% yield off of this, off of all of your chunks or salvage that you are putting through the refinery. And so in total, you are getting 228 SCU of material after the fact. So a lot of people are saying that the Reclaimer got nerfed, and in a sense, it did. Obviously, you're not getting a 1-for-1 rate for your construction material anymore, but also to that point, and I will go over it later, the economy has changed and shifted. But this is also in preparation for crafting and base building. So hopefully we see those soon, but I'm not going to get my hopes up. All that being said is, even though this is technically a nerf to these ships, this is an intended thing. The Reclaimer and all the other salvaging ships were never meant to be a 1-for-1 RMC and CMAT like sales. They were never meant to be like that. There was a refinery process that was meant to take place. Now, one thing I will say about the Reclaimer, though, is on the pledge store currently, it does say that the Reclaimer, I will read it word for word, has a significant cargo hold space alongside an onboard processor capable of refining and storing up to a constellation's worth of raw scrap. Now, the word refining is very specific, and so I am curious if the Reclaimer is actually going to have a refinery on it. I know the Orion is supposed to have a refinery on it for ores and stuff, but I'm curious if they will update this so that way it does not say refining. But as of right now, you cannot refine your materials on the Reclaimer. And just doing my research, this was a topic of conversation up to like 3 years ago, I think. So that being said, I don't know if there will be a refinery on board the Reclaimer. I don't know if they will reword that page so it doesn't say refining, but currently the way it's worded is you should be able to refine these materials on the reclaimer. So that being said, we now went over how the construction material stuff works now. How do we get it nowadays? And how do we make it valuable? And that goes into our next topic of salvaging missions. So I tried to find the SCL that this was mentioned at, but essentially the way salvaging missions are going to work in the future, or the tech that is going to be presented, is you will have very easy, medium, large, extra large, and huge. Like, it'll be in those categories, and ships will be designated to those categories for salvaging. And that tech is already starting to be implemented. If somebody can find me that particular SCL or that quote specifically of the salvaging missions, I would appreciate it, because it is bothering me that I can't find it now. But that being said, they have changed salvaging missions, and they haven't changed the overall way you get them or use them. You still have to pay a fee. You still have to go salvage the ship, but it is your claim, right? So because of the tech that I mentioned previously, you now have very easy, and medium ships. Now, the very easy will be your small ships like the Anvil Arrow, and those will cost you 3,000 UEC. You have the easy ships, which are 5,000 UEC, which will be more your heavy fighters, or like the Argo Raft, or something similar to that, like medium-sized ships. And then you have your 10,000 fee category. These will be your larger ships. And so the smallest one I've seen so far is the Constellation series, as well as the Argo Mole. But also I have seen as big as the A2 and the Hammerhead. So you will be able to get the Hammerhead missions through verified contracts now. These missions also still exist in the unverified tab. So for the Tar Pit's reputation, you can still do these unverified missions. There are not as many of them, but from the data that Shattered pulled for me, they still go through the same rotation of ships that you can see now. There are 38 ships total that are in rotation to be salvaged, and they pop up randomly for both unverified and verified. The only one I haven't seen in the verified tab yet is the Caterpillar, but that is still available in the unverified, which I know it's not the most popular ship to salvage, but it is there in unverified if you're looking for it. So it's important that you start doing these salvage missions if you're looking for high-end operations, because of two reasons. Well, I guess three reasons. You get your RMC and construction material from it, but these ships also come with their basic loadouts. So the A2 comes out with all of its bombs and weapons and all that stuff. And on top of that, you also have all the cargo that is in the ships. So as you can see in this footage here, I've scanned this A2, and this A2 still has all of its cargo. Well, it has its cargo, but it also has all of its loadout, its default loadout. So it has Colossus bombs, it has all its weapons, its components, everything is there. So if you are looking for Colossus bombs, all you can do is just pick up an A2 mission and then go get them off of a ship, and then just abandon the mission. So now you've got these A2 bombs for 10k. So the last thing I want to mention is an honorable mention, but if you are in an org that is doing large salvaging operations, it might be wise to bring somebody with a C2 or a whole C with you when you're doing these salvaging missions. And the reason for that is because if you pick up a Hercules contract, it will have cargo in it. And the reason I mention the cargo is because all your major cargo has been updated. And so pretty much anything you can mine has had an increase in price by 8 to 15%. And so anything coming out of the refinery goes up in price. Now, the buy price, if you're just doing cargo hauling, the buy price is similar to what it is in 431 and previous. But the sell price has increased. So it gives you more of a reason to actually go buy those commodities and then go sell them. Now, some of them are not very good, but there are some that have a significant increase, such as scrap. And that is where we will go full circle here. you can find on these ships scrap and gold, and in rather large quantities. And so you have ships that will have high value cargo, but low quantities of it. And then you have other ships that will have low value cargo, but high quantities of it. Almost every ship that I've scanned has had scrap on it in some capacity, whether it's been like 20 SCU or over 100. And so going to these ships and picking up these boxes of scrap will get you a lot of money because they have specifically increased the sell price of salvage when you take it to pyro. And so I use endgame as an example. I went to see which stations have the best sell prices for cargo, and endgame had the best of all the ones that I tried, and that was at 2.4K, which if you look at UEX for 4.3.1, you can see that it sells for just under 1.8K. Magnus Gateway is the popular route to go because you can buy it at Seraphim and then just take it to Magnus and get good profit off of it. And it has a very high maximum amount that you can go. Obviously, Stanton Gateway is up there too, but you would have to go through the jump gate and it's a little annoying sometimes. But that being said, Pyro is now your new destination for selling scrap. Overall, if you take that 1.7K compared to the 2.4 that it is at now, that is a 41% increase to scrap sales. So take that as you will. That is my recommendation on how to approach the salvaging changes and what is going on with salvaging. The reclaimer and salvaging overall did get nerfed, but it was intentional as well as intended. At the end of the day, this is how salvaging is supposed to work. And I just want to see what they do with RMC, because if it needs to be refined as well, that'll be an interesting thing to see, because it already takes a long time to gather RMC. But I digress. If you have any questions, you can join me at discord.gg/schaulers, all one word. That is the best way to get in touch with me. So if you have any questions about this, that would be the platform to do it. If you like this video and found it informational, I would appreciate if you hit that like button. Also, if you want to see more industry content, if you could hit that subscribe button, I would appreciate it. Outside that, I am Saxa Wine. This is SC Haulers, and we'll see you at the next haul. Love you, bye.